So, Mr. Hersh, you assert that the official American version of what happened to Osama bin Laden is almost entirely false. You say that the Pakistanis were hiding bin Laden, that they knew about the raid, that there was no firefight in the compound, that the Saudis were fronting bin Laden's expenses, that the U.S. didn't bury bin Laden at sea. They tossed what remained of his body basically out of the helicopter. What motive would the U.S. have for lying about this? And not just the U.S., but the Pakistanis and the Saudis.
Most of what you said is pretty much what I write in this most recent article of mine. And all I can tell you is I think the simple way to describe it, our president did authorize the raid. The SEALs carried it out. They did kill bin Laden. They got in and out successfully, and the rest of it is sort of hogwash.
But why, why would there be this, what you're alleging is a massive conspiracy involving what would have to be dozens of people in 3 different countries that has sustained itself until now? What would be the motive for setting up this elaborate hoax?
The critical thing, Anderson, that happened is that we weren't supposed to go public with the raid. The deal with Pasha and Kiani and the rest of the staff of the Pakistan upper reaches of the Pakistani military community was that the SEALs were going to go in, kill this guy, grab the body, take it out. 7 to 10 days, I've had 2 different numbers. Later, President Obama was going to announce that, oh my God, we did a drone strike in Waziristan, the sort of no man's land between Pakistan and Afghanistan, the Hindu Kush mountain area. We did a drone strike, and my God, we saw this big guy. He looked familiar. We took pictures. We took DNA. We got bin Laden. Instead, the night of the raid, the president, for the only thing the people talked to me, obviously military and intelligence people, their belief is he did it for political purposes. I don't know what was in the president's mind. He announced and said immediately that we got him.
Look, there are plenty of people who share your skepticism, but in this situation, there are actual members of SEAL Team 6, Matt Bissonnette, Robert Neal, who have gone public, have said that the raid did in fact happen basically as the government said. Their comrades put their lives at risk, were shot at in the compound. Right. There were bullet holes all over the place. Are you saying they're lying?
I'm saying, I can tell you one thing, I don't know about O'Neill. And Neil said we went in thinking we were going to die, which I think is a great exaggeration. And Bissonnette, who also wrote the book, I think No Easy Day or something like that, certainly was not telling the truth about that. Absolutely. I think that his book there was a lot of stuff interesting in his book, but there was a lot of stuff, operational stuff, that everybody, most of his fellow SEALs sort of laugh at.
Right, but your main sources on this, is one, somebody you say is a retired intelligence official who had access to some of the initial intelligence and also some of the after-action reports, as well, who's unnamed, as well as a Pakistani official from the ISI who retired, I believe, in the early 90s.
But 2 things. What the Pakistani official said was, I think he told one of your colleagues, I have no evidence, and he certainly has no evidence. He has no piece of paper. He just knows what he learned in talking to his comrades and his fellow senior officers. There's a community there, and he learned right away.
Just so our viewers who haven't read the article, there is no documented evidence for what you're saying.
Absolutely. I don't think there's a piece of paper left. If you read the article also, you know that at some point, about a year or 2 after the raid, the Admiral McRaven, the head of the Joint Special Operations Command, who was deeply involved in the planning of this, purged all of the files in the Pentagon of everything related to the bin Laden raid and sent it to the CIA, because they have different rules, much more stringent rules about about dealing with Freedom of Information requests. They can deny almost anything based on operational security.
Why go through, though, having a raid? No matter, even if there was a member of Pakistani intelligence there walking them through the compound, even if the guards were removed, any kind of venture into Pakistan, any kind of military operation comes with risk. If the Pakistanis were in control of bin Laden this entire time, why not just have them kill him and then hand over his body, and then the U.S. says whatever they want to say? I'm not sure I understand why there would have needed to have been this delicate raid at all.
Let me just say this. If you believe that Osama bin Laden, who after 2001 was the most hunted fugitive in the world, the most vicious enemy of America, if you believe that he decided at some point, 5 or 6 years down the road, that the place to go to hide out and be safe was in Abbottabad, a resort town 40 miles or so outside of Islamabad, where a lot of upper-class people go. His house wasn't very ritzy, but he was going to go there. The West Point of Pakistan, their military academy, was a mile or two away. A division, a regimental headquarters for an army unit was 2 or 3 miles away. If you believe that, then, you know, it's the old joke, as I wrote in the article, then it's a Lewis Carroll story. It's a fabulation. It just can't be right.
Cy Hirsch, it's a fascinating article. I encourage people to read it. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. It was fun doing this. Goodbye, buddy.